Hey everybody, it's Ron from Pick Dawgz, and this is Ron's Rundown. We're going to go over the MLB game scheduled for Sunday, August 13th, 2023. Now, if you like what you see, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to put your baseball picks in the comments section below. And if you're looking for my best bets, including my $19 rundown best bet, you can find those at the premium picks tab at pickdawgz.com. Alrighty, let's get into it. Here are the games for Sunday in Major League Baseball. First up, it's the Detroit Tigers taking on the Boston Red Sox. Eduardo Rodriguez faces his former team. We're going to see Cutter Crawford on the other side for Boston. Cutter Crawford has not pitched too well at Fenway Park this season. I mean, it makes sense as Fenway is a very hitter-friendly ballpark. But Cutter, his last start against the Royals, 3 1/3 innings, 7 base hits, 3 earned runs, and a home run in that 9-3 Royals win. The Red Sox are now 1-3 in his last 4 starts overall, and 2 of those losses were at Fenway Park on the season. He's got an ERA above 6 at Fenway in 34 2/3 innings. So to me, there's some value with the Tigers in this game with their best starting pitcher on the mound, facing his former team, like I mentioned. Probably some motivation there, but also the Red Sox have just not done too much against lefties recently. 27th in baseball and team OPS against lefties in the last month. Isolated power, not much better, ranked 23rd in the league with a 28% strikeout rate as a team. Give me the Detroit Tigers here, plus the 1.5 runs with a sprinkle on the money line in this one. Next up, the Minnesota Twins and the Philadelphia Phillies. Sonny Gray and Ranger Suarez are your starters. Similar to Cutter Crawford, Ranger Suarez has struggled at home this season with an ERA above 5 compared to on the road, an ERA below 3. So, Ranger Suarez not the best spot for him facing a Twins team. It's really improved against lefties. At the beginning of the season, this was one of the worst lineups in baseball against lefties, but last month, top 15 in OPS, top 10 in isolated power. Their strikeout rate's gone down quite a bit, which this was a team at the beginning of the year, struck out a ton. So I actually like this matchup offensively for Minnesota. Sonny Gray on the other side has been one of the least profitable pitchers since the beginning of May. He had a really good first month of the season where he was pitching well and the Twins were winning games. But even though he's pitching pretty well now, he's faced a lot of weak teams. Last 4 matchups all against losing teams, losing records. And the Twins were only 2-2 in those ball games. So now you're facing the Philadelphia Phillies on the road. Not an easy matchup. I'm going to take the over here in Minnesota, Philadelphia. Next up, we see the Oakland A's taking on the Washington Nationals. Ken Waldichuk and Trevor Williams are your starters. I just can't get there with Trevor Williams right now. He is really struggling. His last 2 starts, the big problem has been the home runs and the walks, and that's a concern because you're facing an A's team that in the last month has good power numbers against righties and a very high walk percentage against righties. So I think Williams continues to struggle here, gives up a good amount of earned runs early in this game. On the other side, Waldichuk, he's a lefty. The Nationals hit lefties pretty well, so it's not the best matchup for him. But I do think he has a much higher upside to his game compared to Williams. Better expected numbers in terms of the expected ERA. And his last start against the Rangers, a very good lineup. 6 innings, 2 runs, 7 strikeouts. So he's in pretty good form going into this game, much better than Trevor Williams. I'm going to take the Oakland A's here on the money line. Next up, we see the Cincinnati Reds taking on the Pittsburgh Pirates. Luke Weaver and Mitch Keller are your starters. It's crazy to think that a starting pitcher who's got 93 1/3 innings of work and has made quite a few starts this year has an ERA just below 7 and only 4 losses in his win-loss record on the year at 2-4. It just goes to show you how the Reds have really backed him up in the run support department. But I just don't think they can in this game against Mitch Keller and a pretty good bullpen for Pittsburgh, at least as of late. Mitch Keller certainly not having a good second half of the year. He was much better in the first half, but he is a lot better at PNC Park overall this season. 68 innings, a 3.71 ERA, much lower opponent's batting average as well, and a 5-3 win-loss record. I do think Keller pitches pretty well. I think it's going to be a bounce-back spot for Keller. And I also think the Pirates are going to back him up here. The Pittsburgh Pirates in the last month, believe it or not, top 6 in baseball in isolated power against righties. And Luke Weaver, one of the big problems he's had this season and throughout his career, has been the home run ball. I'm going to take the Pittsburgh Pirates here on the money line behind Mitch Keller. Next up, it's the Chicago Cubs taking on the Toronto Blue Jays. Jameson Taillon and Hyun-Jin Ryu are your projected starters. Jameson Taillon, we've talked about it. He's really improved his game. The Cubs are 6-0 his last 6 starts, and he's faced some weaker lineups, but he's still given up 2 earned runs or fewer in 5 of his last 6 games, pitching deeper into ball games like we saw his last start against the Mets, 7 innings, 7 strikeouts, only 2 runs and 3 hits in a 3-2 Cubs win. And he's facing a Blue Jays team. It's crushing lefties, but not so much against righties. They're 18th in the last month in team OPS against righties. They're 25th in isolated power. Their strikeout rate's gone up to 24.2%. So I like this matchup here for Taillon. On the other side, Hyun-Jin Ryu, only 2 starts on the season thus far. He's pitched okay. His last start was pretty solid against the Guardians, but it's a Guardians team that we know has really struggled against lefties this season last year. Now you're facing the Cubs, who have really improved offensively, mostly against righties, but even against lefties, they have solid numbers in the last month. I'm going to take the Chicago Cubs here on the money line at Toronto. Next up, the Cleveland Guardians taking on the Tampa Bay Rays. Tanner Bybee and Zach Eflin are your starters. You're not my favorite game from a betting perspective, but a great pitching matchup. Should be an entertaining game. I'm leaning towards the under here. I know it's a low total, so there's not a ton of wiggle room, but Zach Eflin at home this season, 79 and 2/3 innings, 83 strikeouts, only 8 walks, and a 2.49 ERA. Tanner Bybee's in great form overall. His last 5 games, 3 earned runs or fewer, all those starts, and in 4 of those 5, they were really tough matchups. The Phillies, the Rangers, the Astros, and Blue Jays. Good strikeout numbers, like I mentioned. I'm going to take the under here in Cleveland, Tampa Bay. Next up, we see the New York Yankees taking on the Miami Marlins. Garrett Cole and Yuri Perez are your starters. Another great pitching matchup in this one. I think Yuri Perez bounces back here. His last start was a tough spot to be in at Great American Ballpark. It was his first start back at the Major League level in about a month, and he gave up 2 home runs in that game against a team in Cincinnati that already saw him earlier in the season. Now you go back home in Lone Depot Park, where Perez has been unbelievably good. 32 and 2/3 innings, 43 strikeouts, and a 1.1 ERA in those games. Garrett Cole hasn't been the best lately. We saw him give up 4 runs against the Chicago White Sox of all teams, a team that's really struggling against righties recently. To give up 4 runs and a home run in that 5-1 loss, I wouldn't want to lay this kind of price with the Yankees on the road. So give the Miami Marlins here on the money line. Next up, the Los Angeles Angels taking on the Houston Astros with Chase Silseth and Jose Urquidy on the mound. Jose Urquidy's first start back since April 30th was not a great one. He gave up 5 runs against the Yankees, a home run in 3 1/3 innings with only 1 strikeout and 3 walks to go with it. Now you're facing a red-hot starting pitcher in Chase Silseth. His last game against the Mariners, 7 innings, 2 runs, 12 strikeouts in that one. He's given up 2 earned runs or fewer in all 5 of his last appearances, either out of the bullpen or in the starting pitching role. And when you look at the Angels in the last month, they've got good numbers against righties, OPS and isolated power-wise. The Angels bullpen, we talk about it all the time. It is not a very good bullpen, but when you look at the Houston Astros in terms of expected numbers in the last month, also not great numbers from Houston. I'm going to take the Los Angeles Angels here. I think we're getting a really good price with LA on the run line plus the 1.5 runs and a sprinkle on the money line as well. Next up, the Milwaukee Brewers taking on the Chicago White Sox with Freddie Peralta and Dylan Cease as your starters. Dylan Cease has had some control issues in his last couple of games. 10 walks allowed his last 7 innings of work against the Rangers and Yankees. The White Sox are 1-3 in his last 4 games, and we saw Kopech have some issues with his control in the first game in this series, walking 5 batters early on. The Brewers do a really good job here. They're a pretty patient lineup in the last month, top 10 in baseball in walk percentage as a team against righties. So I like their matchup here against Dylan Cease. Freddie Peralta is in good form, giving up 3 earned runs or fewer in 4 of his last 5 games, with good strikeout numbers to go with it. And even though Peralta throughout his career and this season hasn't been the best on the road, you look at his last 2 road games against the Reds in a tough Great American Ballpark and the Washington Nationals. Both of those games, quality starts. Both of those games, 6 or more strikeouts, and no home runs allowed in either of those starts. Give me the Milwaukee Brewers here on the money line on the road. Next up, we see the Texas Rangers taking on the San Francisco Giants. Dane Dunning and Logan Webb are your starters. I think both of these starting pitchers are solid options, both in good form going into the start. Dane Dunning, back-to-back quality starts for him against the A's and White Sox. Some weaker lineups there, but when you look at San Francisco Giants, and the reason why I like the Rangers in this game, San Francisco is dead last in baseball in the last month against righties and team OPS and isolated power, with a pretty steep 25.3% strikeout rate to go with it. So, the A's, White Sox, easy matchups. You could argue the Giants are right in that mix, at least right now. And Logan Webb, he's pitched really well at Oracle Park this season, and throughout his career, he can go deeper into ball games because he's more of a pitch-to-contact ground ball specialist. But this is a very tough Rangers lineup to face. Throughout the season, they've been one of the best lineups against righties in all of baseball. So I'm going to take the Texas Rangers here on the money line on the road. Next up, we see the Baltimore Orioles taking on the Seattle Mariners. Kyle Bradish and Bryce Miller are your starters. Give me the Mariners in this game. I do think when you look at Bryce Miller, a nice bounce-back outing, his last start against the Angels, 5 innings, 1 run, 10 strikeouts against a team we've mentioned has hit righties pretty well this season and recently. Miller's control was there. His strikeout number is exactly what you want to see. He's been better at home this season with an ERA below 4 compared to on the road with an ERA above 5. I think, it's a tough matchup against the Orioles, but in the last 30 days, Baltimore below league average in isolated power, below league average in team OPS against righties. The strikeout rate's gone up to 25%. Kyle Bradish walked 5 batters his last game against the New York Mets in only 4 2/3 innings. Hasn't been in the best of form going into the start. Give me the Seattle Mariners. Next up, we see the Colorado Rockies taking on the Los Angeles Dodgers. Kyle Freeland and Julio Urias are your starters. I'm going to lay 2.5 runs here with the Dodgers, try to get a better price as they are huge favorites, but I think for good reason. I think there's a pitching mismatch for starters. I mean, Kyle Freeland has really struggled on the road, 1-8 with an ERA above 5, a strikeout to walk ratio that's one of the worst in baseball when he's on the road, a high opponent's batting average. He's facing a Dodgers team that against lefties this season and in the last month, top 5 in baseball in team OPS, good power numbers as well. I think that they get to him early and often. They have a high walk rate and a low strikeout rate against lefties. Urias has been much better at Dodger Stadium this year with an ERA just at 2.22. He's been in good form lately. His last 2 starts, 11 innings, a shutout ball. The Rockies don't have great numbers against lefties this season, especially on the road. To me, all the signs in this game point towards the Dodgers, so give me the Dodgers laying those 2.5 runs. Next up, the San Diego Padres taking on the Arizona Diamondbacks. Seth Lugo and Brandon Pfaadt are your starters. Oh boy, this is not my favorite game on the board, that's for sure. It's just really tough to trust either of these teams or starting pitchers at this point. I mean, Seth Lugo had a 5-0 lead early in his game against the Dodgers last game. Gives up 8 runs in 3 1/3 innings, and they lose that game, Padres 13-7. Brandon Pfaadt was pitching pretty well going up to his last start, and he gave up 4 runs against the Dodgers in only 4 2/3 innings. So for me, I guess I would lean towards the over, but the Diamondbacks lineup has not been great recently, so I don't know if they're going to be able to help us chip in there, but their bullpen has certainly struggled in the last month with an ERA above 7, so give me the over here and a lean with the Padres Diamondbacks. And the final game for Sunday's card in Major League Baseball, it's the Atlanta Braves taking on the New York Mets with Yonny Chirinos and Kodai Senga as your starters. When I looked at the probable starting pitchers for this series, I thought that this was the game that the Mets had the best chance at winning, plainly because they have their best starting pitcher on the mound here in Kodai Senga, who has pitched really well at Citi Field, going up against the weakest link, in my opinion, in this Braves rotation in Yonny Chirinos, who gave up 6 more runs in his last game against the Pirates. Now, he has struggled as a Brave so far, giving up 4 runs in 3 2, 3 runs in only 5, and then 6 runs his last game, like we mentioned, 4 home runs in that one. But the Braves still won all 3 of those games. That's how good this Braves lineup is. But against Senga, like I talked about, 2.45 ERA at Citi Field in 62 1/3 innings, good strikeout numbers. He's in good form. I still think the Mets have enough to win this game in the end. So give me the New York Mets on the money line at Citi Field. And that's it. Those are the games for Sunday in baseball. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. And don't forget to put your baseball picks in the comments section below. Again, if you're looking for my best bets, you can find those at Pick Dawgz Premium. As always, this is Ron Romanelli. Good luck.